Good evening, viewers. It's another Thursday. Welcome to Man Talk with Dougie. The rain is pounding. We are thanking God for the rains and for the blessings that come with the rain. Last week and the other week, we had some interesting conversations, and we were speaking about tradition versus culture, and we got into a bit of depth about tradition, where it comes and blends with Christianity, where Christianity comes in and gets to work well with tradition. We're on a break and we'll be continuing next week, speaking a lot about goats and where it is that they come into our lives and how they are affecting today. We have got an exciting conversation, and it is about health in men. And today we'll be just looking at how it is that health gets to affect us in different ways. We've got a knowledgeable guest with us. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, viewers. My name is Nicholas Kariukinjeru. I'm a clinic officer by profession and a lecturer at the Kenya Medical Training College. I head the Department of Chest Medicine. I'm married to one wife and have 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. They're all grown-ups. Good evening, viewers.
All right. Karibu sana. Daktari, men do not talk about health issues. In fact, men have general issues in expressing themselves. When we want to speak about some of the issues that affect men and even our wives and daughters and sisters and mothers, we know that men have a lot of stress, and sometimes we think we are healthy, yet we are not healthy. So will you be kind enough to break down what health is? What is being healthy?
Well, being health is not just absence of disease, but it's the well-being both physically, spiritually, emotionally, and at times even put financially. Because at times when you are not financially stable, it can affect you spiritually. It can affect your health.
It can affect your health.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to first talk about health and mental health, first of all. When somebody is getting depressed or when somebody is going mad, because somebody said that it is stress, then depression, then madness, going all that way. It probably not the same order. But as somebody is going into madness or going to depression, would they know, can he or she know that I'm actually depressed? I'm actually going, the way I'm going, mimi nitakuwa wazimu.
Mental health is something that at times is very misunderstood, and at times when we call people mad, I think it's not a very good description for the condition. And for you to get to a place where in late terms, in the late term, or to a layman, you call somebody mad. Then there are signs that will lead you towards that, and it's something that does not just happen instantly. It's usually a gradual thing. Yes, and I think usually it starts with something we call depression. And when we talk about depression, the signs of depression most of the time is you find that the clients or the individuals are withdrawn from their daily activities. They are less interested in doing what they're supposed to be doing. At times they can just change their habits. They want to just sleep.
They're not showering.
Exactly. And at times even they get to a state where they want to harm themselves. And that means at times it takes other people to inform them that they are not well.
Takes other people to inform them.
Yes.
Which means there are signs that the other person would see that show hapa mambo si mazuri.
Exactly. For instance, for men, at times men want to withdraw and could be go somewhere and just think about things as naturally. When you look at a man and the way, compared to a woman, women like when they have issues, they like talking about them.
Yes.
For us men, I think what we usually do is to kind of withdraw and call ourselves to like a small meeting.
Yes.
And could be now start weighing out on the issues that are affecting us. And that is where at times when you're not so keen, when you don't share with others, or when we don't have people we're working with, it might be, it might lead to the state changing from depression to now as a real disease.
A mental disease.
Mental disease,
You're
yes.
being very polite with the word.
Yes, I don't want to go to the word
Madness.
madness.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there are people who are generally very good, very calm people, very happy souls. They start fighting everybody. They start fighting with their colleagues at work. They start fighting with families. They start fighting with friends. They don't get along together with social people in the society. Is that a sign, or is that somebody who's probably just become smarter overnight? Would that be one of the flags?
Certainly. Change in behavior, change in mood, change in perspective of things. When not very well articulated, or when it cannot be explained for the reason behind it. For instance, if I woke up tomorrow and went to class and start talking about astronomy,
Yes.
the sun, the moon, the stars,
Yes.
and I've not gone to class about it, but I'm just
Yes, figure of speech.
every other person might start thinking or asking, what's wrong with this particular person? Could be I'm supposed to be teaching my community health or
Yes.
whatever, but now I start talking about astronomy. Then there must be something, and
Your
I'm
thoughts
not
must be headed that way.
and I'm not giving a feedback about something that I've done, or rather a course I've gone to. But now it's just something that is out of the blues. Then that means there must be something that is not good. That has gone. My mental faculties are not functioning well.
Daktari, if I hear you right,
Yes.
what you're telling me, what you're telling the audience, is that on social media, and we've had people who committed suicide, but they started talking about the next life, about my transition, those kind of things. So what, if I hear you right, are you saying that we need to be very conscious on what people are posting, what people are saying, what they're discussing about, in case they're trying to express themselves?
I agree with you. We need to be very sensitive about what we're reading, especially with our friends. We know most of our friends how they react to some things. And when we see a certain trend out of the normal, it's usually good to take your phone, call them, and find out how they are.
Okay.
And yes.
All right. I know I'm going now a lot into counseling and psychology and those ones, and I want us to come back. And I want you to first start by blood pressure. People call it pressure. I think it has a couple of names that people define it as. What is it? What causes it? How does it get healed? If at all it can be mended.
Okay. High blood pressure is one of the most common non-communicable diseases that we are the whole world is grappling with. It's one of the diseases that used to be called affluent diseases, because a while ago we don't have really enough data to say whether we didn't have high blood pressure before, or because of the change of lifestyle,
Yes.
many people have become hypertensive. And to be on the safe side, let me first of all put the parameters in place. For us to say that you have high blood pressure, it's usually a range of blood pressure or measurement which you must be taken either in a hospital or a clinic. And it's usually, blood pressure is usually a range. And the normal range is usually from the diastolic pressure of 60 to 90.
Yes.
And the systolic pressure of 100 to 140. Anything above 140 for the systolic, and anything above 90 for the diastolic, then that means you have high blood pressure.
So in layman language,
Yes.
I have gone to the machine that's here. What should it read normal? This and this. What should it read normally?
So it's usually something like 100 over 60.
Yes.
If you get something like that, that's within normal. But now, if it goes to, could be, let's say, something like 150 over 95 or over 100, that means your pressure is a little bit high. And what does that mean? Usually we call it high blood pressure because that means that's the pressure that your heart is exerting on your vessels.
It's pumping.
Yes.
The pressure is high.
Yes. And at times, there are very many factors that could lead to high blood pressure. Yeah, so some might be genetic, others might be issues to do with your weight, others might be issues to do with the content or the salt levels of your, or rather the way you, the fluids within your system. Okay, so like when you have a lot of sodium or salt or sodium chloride within your blood system, then at times it can lead to you holding a lot of fluid within your blood vessels. That means when when blood is pumping,
yes,
then there's a lot of resistance.
So and now
the heart
here
is pumping, yes.
Here is something. On one side, there are people who say the salt is okay. On the other side, we are told that salt cannot harm you. In fact, they say you are the salt of the earth. On the other hand, again, so those who take a bit more of salt until they taste it, is that the problem? Is the problem raw salt? Is the problem that if it is cooked salt, haina shida?
Mainly it's not about just salt per se. It's in because we usually talk about electrolytes in your body system, especially the fluids within your system. So if you have, and that is why when we have something, when you have something like high blood pressure, or even kidney problems, you'll go to a hospital and they'll take something we call urea. They'll check for something we call urea and the electrolytes.
Yes.
Basically, in a layman's term, we're just checking at the levels of salt within your system.
Yes.
So if they are a little bit elevated at times, they can affect your blood pressure.
Okay.
Yes. So you've talked about raw salt and cooked salt.
Yes.
At times we say cooked salt is usually good, and we say whatever salt has been put in food, try to avoid adding salt
Okay.
on the table. But usually, that is not usually the main cause of high blood pressure. But usually is about how well we hydrate, because hydration is just means how well we take our water, how well our kidneys are functioning, how active we are, so that if there's any extra stuff that needs to come out, it needs to come out.
There are people who say that they don't take water, but they take a lot of tea. In fact, they take tea after every meal. Right now, they are taking tea. After dinner, they'll take 2 or 3 cups of tea. Can tea, would it get to be a hydrant instead of water? Can it supplement water?
Tea can never supplement water. Water needs to be taken as water. Because when you look at tea, it's just like at times you feel thirsty. And I've seen people talking about not only about tea, even things like soda.
Yes.
You feel thirsty, you take soda. So what does that mean? Soda or tea cannot supplement water. Because water has its own role when it comes to hydration of the body. Because water is supposed to act as a vehicle that helps in the carrying out of impurities from the body.
Okay.
Yes.
Blood pressure. Is it curable? If yes, how? If no, how do we manage it?
There's some types of blood pressure that can be treated and cured if the source is known. But when the source is not known, there's some, and the majority of people fall there. There's some blood, most of the blood pressures are not treatable, but they are manageable. And that is where now we give antihypertensives, which help in maintaining normal blood pressure within an individual.
Which then must take religiously.
Yes. And at times we even recommend not only taking medication, there are a variety of things that we recommend. One, we could be talk about you changing your diet, you changing, if it's something to do with sedentary lifestyle, we ask you to start doing exercises and things like that. If we realize it was something to do with other diseases, because there are some other diseases, even stressful situations that can lead to high blood pressure, then we ask you to manage your stress, and when you follow the instructions, most often than not, the blood pressure is usually managed. And of course, that means not only taking medication, that also means you need to keep on getting regular checkups,
Yes.
and the medications being adjusted according to what is being observed by
All
a
right.
physician.
So finally on that one, how to those that do not have blood pressure, how can we avoid it?
Blood pressure can be avoided, especially by regular maintenance of your health.
Yes.
How? Take sufficient water,
Yes.
at least to make sure that impurities are getting out of your bodies.
Yes.
Rest, excuse me.
Yes.
Take adequate rest. Do regular exercises.
Yes.
And of course, feed well and don't overfeed.
So I want to throw you off.
Yes.
It's a question that's been asked by Elder Mwaura of the Goto Parish. And before that, your background, you've got a bachelor's degree in biblical studies and community development. In fact, you're pursuing a master's in biblical studies. So if we go to Romans, Chronicles 21, 18 and 19, based on that, the question is, are there diseases today that are afflicted or sent by God?
That's a very theological question.
Yes.
And I'll want to say this. Yes, there's some diseases, and I don't want to mention any,
Yes.
that could be associated with familial sins, in quotes.
Lifestyle sins.
Lifestyle sins to some extent, but there's some. Okay, let's look at it from a different perspective. When you come to hospital, and not necessarily about sins, but there are some things that run in a family.
Yes.
So why do I ask you whether, when we are taking history, you'll always, when you go to a hospital, what do you usually ask you?
About the background.
Yes. Do you have somebody in your family who has high blood pressure?
Yes.
Do you have somebody in your family who has ever had cancer?
Yes.
Do you have? So there are some things that run in a family. There could be genetic coding that may affect some people more than others. But I'd be very reluctant to talk about God afflicting people with diseases, but it's possible.
Okay. Sugar. Before sugar,
Yes.
as men especially, and the more village you go, the more it happens. People tend to serve food. Kujaza sahani a bit, too much. And sometimes, there are people who serve food, it becomes embarrassing. It can't balance. Are there dangers of overeating? Or is it digestion tu na itaenda kesho kula jaza tumbo tena?
There are many dangers of overindulging, not only in food, but in almost everything. That's the way of life.
Yes.
And let's come to food. Nowadays, most of the people are not very active.
Yes.
And it's very easy. And of course, the trend now, we've seen even very young children becoming obese. Why? Because they're taking a lot of food, especially starch.
Yes.
And they're not very active. So what does that mean? All that food, all that starch is turned into fat.
Yes.
And when that is turned into fat, then that means they become overweight. And this becomes a very precarious condition for health. And most of them now have we've started seeing very young children or very young men and women developing high blood pressure and diseases that we thought were for very old people or for middle-aged people. But now we're seeing them developing in children.
And I think one of the problems that we have is that we realize we are full in the head, not in the stomach.
Yes.
Because we don't know when to limit it.
Exactly.
Sugar. Sometimes people talk and say, don't take too much sugar, you'll get diabetes. Sometimes people say, no, sugar can never harm you, and they'll put 6 spoonfuls of sugar. Can sugar intake harm somebody?
I don't want to say about sugar intake alone. I'll say about overfeeding. because most of the food we take, especially when you're talking about starch, most of it is converted into glucose.
Yes.
And that is what really complicates, because when you have too much glucose in the system and your insulin is not sufficient, that's when we start talking about diabetes, when you start overworking your pancreas.
Okay, so again,
Yeah.
so diabetes and the sugar is not only the sugar in the cup of tea.
Exactly.
It could be excess sugar from foods that have got sugar.
Yes.
Do you want to be kind to share which foods have got sugar in it, therefore too much of that might be too much of sugar, might be a problem?
Now, almost all the starchy food, okay, especially food that we call processed food.
Yes.
For instance, white rice, white wheat, maize meal, ugali. The one that is not, unajua kuna ile ya kisiagi. Yes.
Ile number 10.
Yes. That means that if you take this kind of starch, it's very easily converted into sugar in the system. So
sorry to cut you short, because there comes the contradiction that we say that unga of kisiagi with all those everything inside is the healthier one, and now it seems it can be more unhealthy.
no, that one is healthy. The kisiagi one has a lot of fiber.
Yes.
So it's good, it's better, and that is why
Is
even
fiber good for digestion?
Exactly.
Only.
But this other one, that all that has been removed, then you have the white one only. I mean,
Just the yes.
Yes, that's the one that we're saying that if you overfeed, if you take a lot of that,
Okay.
then that means you have a lot of starch in the system.
Yes.
And when you have that, that can also cause issues. But it's not only about sugar per se. And it's not about one-time thing. It's about many other things. You take a lot of starch, you're not exercising, and of course, you are predisposed. You have the familial tendency of developing diabetes. There are people who are almost 100 kgs and above, and they still don't have diabetes. There are others who just go a little bit of overweight.
Above 50 and
They develop sugar. So mainly, diabetes is, I wouldn't want to say diabetes you develop because of taking a lot of sugar per se, but it's how your body processes this sugar. And mainly is about how your pancreas, your pancreas functions. That is how insulin is produced in your system to help in the digestion or the processing of the starch that, or rather the sugars that are in the system.
okay.
Yeah.
Pancreas, I can't see it. I wasn't very good in sciences, daktari. What is another word for pancreas? It's not nyongo. Is it the one that has mchanga in chicken? No.
No, that's a gizzard. So pancreas is, I'm trying to look for another word. In English, I think it's just called pancreas. In Kiswahili,
Okay, well,
Yes.
I will not worry about that. I'll go back to the same starch story. Today, people are avoiding bread and cake, and they are going health fanatism. They are eating arrowroot, eating guache and those things. They don't eat eggs because they want to stay healthy. They say this is the healthy food, and they are eating that in big amounts because hii ndio ile daktari anasema tukule. Is that the right track, or is that a myth? Again.
well, arrowroots and sweet potatoes are good. They have their benefits because at least they still have the fibers, they still have other essential elements that are beneficial to health. But they should be taken at the right proportion. And now, when you talk about eggs, eggs are proteins, and an egg is it's an SI unit. I would call it an SI unit, a measure, because when you take an egg, everything in an egg can be absorbed into the body. It has vitamins, it has minerals, it has proteins. So an egg is something that is very beneficial when it comes to food. Yes.
People say, we are told, do not take an egg once a week. Do not take more than 3 eggs in a week. Is that true? I know there are people who take an egg once a month and they get sick. There are people who take 4 eggs every day and they're okay. What is the truth from a daktari's point of view?
Taking of eggs is good because an egg is it's a protein, and we always recommend you to take a balanced diet. So when you talk about you taking an egg once a week, it's not sufficient, but you can only talk about you limiting your egg intake when you have other proteins in your meal.
So let me understand this.
Yes.
An egg once a week is not enough.
Yes.
An egg once a day is not enough. Okay. If you're not taking any other proteins, it is okay to eat an egg every day.
Yes. Because the most important thing, and this is what we need to understand, that we need a balanced diet for our bodies to function well.
Yes.
So if you're only taking starch and then you avoid taking that egg, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And usually we look at it from what is available. In most people, and in most cases, many people can afford an egg instead of meat. Many people can afford an egg instead of milk. So why limit them from getting the source of protein from what is available?
Interesting. Viewers, we will take a break. We are with Dr. Njero. We hope it's informative. Please ask your questions to the number on the screen. We shall be back in a minute. This is CAC TV. Don't touch that dial.
Are you looking to grow your business? CAC TV offers you a variety of advertising opportunities to suit your budget. Advertise with us today and reach your potential customers countrywide. For more information, email us on sales@cactv.org or call 011 00 90 647.
Keep it CAC now and going forward. We have a lot of family programs, and this being a Christian commercial station, we will partner with you as institutions, as individuals, so that we are able to reach out to the entire world. One person said that my parish is the entire world, and I believe that CAC TV is going globally, and therefore bring your business. We are going to advertise it and also partner with you.
To partner with us, send your financial support to pay bill number 401-9613, account partner. Pay bill number 401-9613, account partner.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are with Dr. Njero and we are talking about health in men and again in the whole family setup. And there are people, Daktari, who talk about food and say, and we're speaking about starch and sugar and the moderation. And there are people who say, mimi kama sijakula ugali, sijakula chakula. And for them, they will take ugali for lunch, they'll take ugali for dinner, they'll take ugali as a snack, regardless of whether they are doing manual work or not. Are there foods with high and low metabolism? Are there foods which are recommended for lunch and others recommended for supper?
Thank you. That's a very nice question.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to look at it from a different perspective. One, usually we should be eating in view of the kind of work we do. And at times that is why you see many people just prefer to snack,
Yes.
not necessarily overfeed.
Yes.
In an African culture, or an African context,
Yes.
in most of the traditional way of feeding, most of the time people go to work without even taking breakfast. And breakfast should be the greatest meal of the day.
I am culprit, by the way.
Yes. Why? Because you eat so that you can go work. You get energy to work. So when you go to work and you have not fed, what does that mean?
Shouldn't you eat when you're hungry? Only.
It's a nice way of looking at it. That should be it. You eat when you're hungry.
Mm.
And also when you want to go and work.
Okay.
Yeah. But now look at it from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we usually do most of the time? You've gone, you've worked the whole day, you've kind of fasted most of the time.
Yeah.
Then at night, you take a heavy supper.
Yeah.
And then that means even at night you'll not sleep well. Why? That's the time you are having your digestion, so you sweat a lot, you toss and turn in bed. It's not healthy. In fact, what is recommended and what should ideally be happening is that you take your breakfast, a heavy breakfast, go work, do whatever kind of stuff you're doing.
Yes.
Take a moderate lunch. Then at night, you just snack.
So the same story that says, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a regular person, dinner like a poor man.
Exactly.
So some of the times when people say, I'm not able to sleep, I am, it could be something to do with digestion of food.
Exactly. And that could also maybe one of the reasons why we're experiencing a lot of overweight.
Yes.
Because what does that mean? Most of the time, your body gets used to your feeding habits. And that is why at times you hear people say that, well, I don't feel like eating in the morning.
Yes.
Because that is what you've taught your body to do.
Yes.
So when you take a heavy dinner, your body will know, already knows, it's programmed that because I'm used to taking a heavy dinner.
Yes.
What happens? It takes all that starch, puts it into the store, and then you start building up fat.
All
So
right.
that during the day, because it knows that you have already trained it, during the day you'll not give it anything.
You'll starve me.
So it will
So
start
I'll use-
doing what?
Oh, okay, saving,
Yes.
stashing, hoarding.
Exactly.
Are there foods which are recommended for lunch and others for dinner?
Not necessarily. Usually, we talk about food that we might recommend for something like snacking.
Yes.
Okay? And this is where we recommend things like nuts and seeds. Yeah. Because these are things that you just need a handful of.
Yes.
And they provide the necessary
Relief from
some ingredients.
of course, some
or
take a
the
bowl
minerals,
full.
yes, that you need.
Earlier in this diet conversation, you said that so when somebody doesn't take a certain meal, like breakfast, you're like fasting. Is fasting recommended for diet instead of exercise? I've heard that, but what's your take on? I have heard that there's something called intermittent fasting. How does it help? Please tell us about it.
Intermittent fasting is fasting with intention, and it helps in burning of extra fat and starch within the system.
Yeah.
So when you're fasting, you fast, let's say, like you choose which meals to take in a day. Then you give yourself like 16 hours or so to stay without eating.
Okay.
So within that time that you're fasting, that means whatever food is in the system,
Yes.
whatever sugars are in the system,
Yes.
have already been utilized, and now your body might even start going into burning extra fat, the fat in the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, one needs guidance. It's not just starving and saying, I will fast to cut on weight and still do these number of strenuous chores.
Yes. When it comes to fasting and exercise, I think we need to be very careful about that. And it's not intermittent fasting is not for everybody, but anybody can practice it, because intermittent fasting is not so strenuous like
Yes.
what we call 21 days fasting or Esther fasting when it comes to religious activities. Because this one now is more of a health or rather a fast that is related to your body or your health. And I'm not saying that the fast that we do religiously or spiritually is not important. It's very important, and we've seen people even remitting, going into remission for cancers and
Yes.
some of these conditions, even high blood pressure and things like that, by just engaging in fasting.
Cancer, now that you brought it up, can one avoid getting cancer?
Well, when you talk about cancer, cancer is just abnormal cell growth within the body, or the cells growing out of proportion or multiplying faster
Yes.
than the regular ones. Now, is it possible for you to avoid that? It all depends with the triggering factor. At times, the triggering factor could be some virus or some infection or some irritants. So it's not easy to say, but some types of cancers can be avoided, but others you cannot be able to avoid. Because if it's something that is related to, let's say for instance, we're talking about cervical cancer one of the predisposing factors for cervical cancer is human papilloma virus. So whether, and we say at times you can be able to avoid that, and that is why you see the Ministry of Health recommends for girls who have not become sexually active, so girls who are around age of 9, 10, 11, 12, they can be able to get a vaccine that helps in prevention of the same.
Okay.
But now when it comes to other, like we have other cancers that are predisposed by, could be the Epstein-Barr virus, which might be spread by other organisms, like could be mosquitoes and things like that. It might be difficult to control that, because if it bites you, and this usually for the young kids, they can develop. It's not directly related, but it all depends on the predisposing factors.
Is prostate cancer?
Prostate is not a cancer. Prostate is a gland.
Is a gland.
But of course, it can develop cancer. So when we usually talk about BPH, benign prostate hypertrophy, that's just saying your prostate gland becomes a little bit bigger. And this is a normal process for every man.
In fact, while we are that one now,
Yes.
many men have not understood what it is. There is just a fear. It's actually getting kind of stigmatized out there. And you'll be probed in certain places. Many of the wives or daughters or sisters do not really understand what this prostate animal is. Please break it down for us.
Prostate is a very important organ in the body because it produces seminal fluids. This is what really gives the man the ability to fertilize. Now, the testicles just produce the what do you call it? The sperms.
Yes.
But now the prostate produces the seminal fluid
To help it get
now,
out and go.
Yeah, to help in the mobilization
Yes.
or transportation.
Yes.
Now, as a man grows old, as years goes by, most of them, the prostate becomes larger or increases in size. But that does not mean it has become cancerous. But nowadays, you've talked about the digital examination. Yes, a while ago when the technology was a little bit still
Analog.
yes. That was one of the main examination
Yes.
we recommended for us to find out whether you have an enlarged prostate.
Yes.
But nowadays, we have even a blood test that can be done
Yes.
to screen men, just like what we do for blood sugar.
Yes.
Yeah, we call it PSA. That is PSA.
Yes.
So you just prick, you wait for around 5-10 minutes, you get your results back. It will tell you whether you have your prostate. Usually, the prostate produces some kind of. Or am I forgetting this?
But unfortunately,
Yes.
I can't help you.
Yes.
But it will show levels if your levels your levels are okay or if they excess.
Yes. So when they are beyond 4, then it will turn positive. And that is when now we can recommend you go to the hospital. We do further investigation.
So when one has a boil, it's an accumulation of pus that will probably explode at some point.
Yes.
So is the swelling of the gland an accumulation of the fluids, which makes it swell and therefore encouragement to get them out faster? Or is it just, it doesn't matter?
Not necessarily. It's okay. We are talking about the prostate here.
Yes.
The enlargement of the prostate is not because of accumulation of anything. It's just like Kubi. You've been active in football.
Yes.
When you overuse your muscles, what happens?
They
They become bigger,
Yes.
they become larger. The same thing with the prostate.
So the more, okay, so how,
But I hope you get what I'm saying.
I'm getting,
Yes, but it's not because of overuse, but it becomes a little bit bigger
Yes,
with time
wear and tear.
with age. Yes.
can the gland be removed?
Yes, it can be removed.
Okay.
Yes.
So when that happens, for the benefit of viewers, so that we may know, so for the stigma to go down, how does that situation get sorted out? How do we get into recovery mode?
Okay. Usually nowadays, there are different methods of treating prostate. Benign hypertrophy of the prostate. That is BPH. One, we have some medication we give that help the prostate gland to shrink. The only time nowadays I've seen us recommending most of the time for the removal of the gland is when it's cancerous.
Okay.
Yes. But most often than not, if it's benign, even if it's, and you see, how do you realize that you have an enlarged prostate? At times it's just because the stream of urine for men becomes very limited.
Yes.
So, and at times that means even when men pass urine, they still feel not the whole of it has not gone
Yes.
out. It's still some kind of retention.
Yes.
And at times even a little bit of hesitancy. And that could be the reason why they might recommend the use of drugs. But when it's enlarged, but the stream is still okay and they're still urinating well, you can stay with this. We can live with it.
Pili pili. And there are people who take chili and some take excess pili pili.
Yes.
And sometimes when one takes a lot of pili-pili, there is a burning sensation. Would that affect the prostate in any way? Or accelerate its swelling?
Not necessarily. There are some studies that have shown that constant irritation, especially due to things like that, can lead to that. But it's not necessarily because of that.
Yes.
Yes. At times it could be because of other source of irritation, and at times it could be things to do with infection,
Okay.
and things like that.
There are times when one gets static and you touch something and you feel you've been shocked. You touch something and you feel there's a shock, like the car or, metal or... What causes that? That shock?
You remember, I think when we started, we talked about water being something that is very important.
Yes.
And I talked about fluids and electrolytes in the body. So mainly, especially when you don't hydrate well and you have a lot of electrolytes that are more concentrated, it becomes easy for them to be charged.
Okay.
And that means even when you wear some kind of clothes, static forces.
Yes, or hair.
Or hair.
Yes.
It can happen. It can happen to anybody, but it's more pronounced when you are dehydrated.
So water, water, water.
Yes.
Let's go to fruits. First of all, men don't like fruits. A majority.
Okay.
They feel fruits are not food and they want to eat real food. And while I know that fruits are great and all of that, I just want to focus on fruits with some skin and some gauzy that we remove. Is there any skin that we remove that is really important that we should not be throwing away in fruits?
In fact, most of the fruits, the outer cover is usually very nutritious. And even when you're eating your banana, not necessarily the very outer one, but those two fiber
Inside, yes.
They're
Or
also,
the two strings.
Yes, those two strings. Those are the ones that usually contain the potassium we talk about when you're taking banana.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Because here we peel, then we remove the strings.
Yes, those two strings are very nutritious. Now, especially for men, fructose or sugar in fruits is very essential. Because usually, like when you're dealing with issues to do with infertility, fructose or fruit sugar is one of the stuff that is recommended in the system. Yes. And that one helps in the motility, or rather mobility, of the sperms.
And the story says that njugu karanga is very, very good for fertility. So, yeah?
I've heard of that, and I don't want to say yes or no, but most of the nuts, okay, mainly those that contain a lot of zinc, so, and seeds,
Yes.
especially things like pumpkin seeds,
Yes.
Even watermelon seeds, sim, chia seeds, they're very important, they're very essential.
And the skin, the cover?
Yes, especially for things like mangoes. Of course, the coconut, the
Coconut oil.
No, the peanuts
Yes.
on njugu karanga. That skin that you're throwing away is usually the best, the most nutritious. But unfortunately, because of the way we prepare the groundnut, at times we put a lot of salt, which might render it more harmful than useful.
All right. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. Unfortunately, sometimes the hour is shorter than we had planned. But Dr. Njeru, thank you very, very much for that insightful conversation that we have had. We learned that everything is in moderation. Everything in excess will give your mind, will give your heart, will give your body stress. We will continue with this conversation another time because we know that the questions have started coming in and they are intense. And so we'll need to invite you again, Daktari, to come and sit with us. Next week, we get to talk into part 3 of the conversation about tradition versus Christianity. We get to have our own Dr. Reverend Dairo, as well as Dr. Richard and Sir George. We ask that somebody gets to come in and tell us about those goats and the importance. We still haven't gotten anybody. We are still waiting. So until then, let's see you on CAC TV on Thursday in Man Talk with Dougie. Good night and have a great rest of the week ahead. Thank you.